Hi, everybody. This is Warren Herman. And so tonight, what we're going to talk about is an interesting argument that we can make for the truth of Christianity. So, this argument is called the argument from, we could call this from the conscious and unconscious mind, or the argument from the unruly emotions. We can make some different names for it. And it basically goes as follows: that generally we can make as this first premise the simple fact that there's this sense in which, when when you decide to do something, say, okay, I don't want to be scared anymore of going out in public or something like that. You don't have complete control over your emotions. You may say, hey, it's not scary, but you have to fight with yourself. Or let's say you say, hey, I don't want to get angry at that person anymore, but your emotions still have the feeling, and you don't really have authority all the way down through them. You can obviously influence your emotions, think different things specifically, but there's a way in which your mind kind of has a mind of its own. Your emotions kind of have a life of their own. There's this, there's a famous story about the Holocaust survivor, Corrie ten Boom. And she talks about seeing a man who was, she recognized him in the audience as one of the guards at one of the concentration camps that she was in. And he was approaching her, and she had just spoken on the subject of forgiveness. And she sees this man coming up to her, and he says, maybe you don't remember me, but I was a guard at Auschwitz, for example. And he says, he says to her, can you forgive me for what I did? And she's looking and thinking, how am I going to feel this? Because I'm just feel awful, And she kind of tells God, she says, God, I'm going to lift my hand and shake this guy's hand, but you have to supply the feelings. Because the thing is, she couldn't just say, hey, I feel great about this. She couldn't do a simple act of the will and control this. So she reaches out, and all of a sudden she feels this overwhelming sense of forgiveness and love for this person. But the point of the story is that she doesn't have complete control over all the aspects of her mind and emotions, although obviously she just spent a whole hour speaking about forgiveness. She just doesn't have control over every ounce of her feeling. She kind of has to, rely on God in that scenario. But we can see this very broadly in the experience of humanity, that, you say, hey, I don't want to eat this food anymore, but you still feel like you want it. I mean, this just shows you that there's some part of you that's you're the front seat driver and there's a back seat driver, and this is a problem. So how do we account for this? The argument is going to be that Christianity is the best explanation for this front seat driver, back seat driver problem that we experience in all kinds of areas of our mental and emotional life. So how else can this be explained? Let's go through the list. So, at a different, we've outlined in other previous videos about these kind of special or strange arguments for the validity of Christianity and Catholicism. We've looked at the way in which different faculties are prioritized in different religions. And so, similarly, we're going to go through the same type of list. So we're going to start with religions that are about awareness. So we're going to say a religion that's about awareness, such as Hinduism or Buddhism, will have an explanation of why. So why is there this split? And so the split is probably going to be explained in a way. Okay, the person has something like karma. They've kind of been attached to things in the world, and so they're unconscious. So the person really ultimately is free. The person really ultimately is the divine. But the thing is, they've forgotten who they are. They're unconscious, and that's why they seem to have this split. Because although they should be free, they kind of have this kind of unconscious tendency. So we have this kind of unconscious thing. There are some other ways we might be saying, but let's leave it there. Then we have this explanation maybe from the Stoics. And so the Stoics might say things, and I looked at the Stoics a long time ago trying to figure this out, and they would maybe say, well, the thing is that you're untrained. You're not trained how to use reason. But it's a very interesting paradox, because the Stoics would say that the nature of a human is to be rational, but somehow all humans behave irrationally all the time. So it's our nature is to be rational, yet we don't obey it. That's a very odd thing. Every other thing in the universe obeys its nature, but humanity would then be unique as the one thing that does not follow the thing that defines it. So that obviously shows that something is strange about humanity that is not as strange necessarily in terms of, okay, it's the nature of a material object to sit on the floor, it's the nature of dogs to bite, it's the nature of birds to fly, but it's the nature of humans to be reasonable, yet they don't do that naturally. That's kind of weird. Something's wrong. So what's the explanation? How come the nature of humans, even if we did this from the Hindu perspective, the nature of humans is that they're divine, but they don't know about it. The nature of humans is that they're rational in the Stoicism, but they don't act on it. So how is their true nature? Literally, we use that even in Hinduism. Your true nature is the divine. But if that's your true nature, how come that's not your standard thing? If you're supposed to be rational, how come that's not your standard thing? We could also probably look at religions like Islam, Judaism, these type of things. So we could say but if we have something maybe if we had some type of a theistic system, especially if we throw the 12 steps and that kind of thing, if we throw that in there at that theistic level, if we have a theistic system without a fall, we could say, okay, well, God made you. Well, why did God make you in a broken way? Or God made you in his image. Well, how could it be in his image if you have this kind of conflict with your own feelings? If you could say, okay, I don't want to eat all the candy in the world, and the other part of you says, yes, well, how could there be this? You're kind of not made so well in this thing. So how can we explain all these things? Either your nature is like this, your nature is that you are God, you are consciousness, but you remain acting like a person and unconscious. You are rational, but you act irrationally, or you're made in the image of God, but you act kind of animalistic and humanistic and try to be all these different things. You try to be an angel, try to be an animal, but you're all over the place. Well, none of these explanations are working until you get down to Christianity and you say, okay, well, people are made in the image of God, but they fell. And so you say, okay, well, the fall created the fact that humans are broken. We're not the way that we originally were, with this idea of this kind of integrity between that our emotions were originally subject entirely to our reason. It's without that understanding, we then have to say, okay, well, God obviously made something wrong. The thing is, in Christianity, we get to say God made something right, and we messed it up because somehow we kind of dislodged this, and now the passions, the emotions, and everything are all overkill. Because this is the best fit for how you would say, why do we have intrusive thoughts? Why do you say, when I'm afraid of something, all of a sudden I think about it all the time? Or, why do I have all these problems? Why do I have all this, why does somebody feel anxious, when they wish they could do that thing? Why can't they just tell their emotion to be quiet? Well, because of the fall. And the fascinating and fun part of this, this kind of, just going to throw this in as a bonus, this is a really fun way of coping with, anything like intrusive thoughts or problems like that. Because once you notice, okay, let's say somebody, there's other videos about intrusive thoughts, so I'm not going to do a whole unpacking on this, but let's just say someone's experiencing one of the effects of this. Somebody's experiencing one of the effects of this. They then could say, okay, I'm noticing that I'm afraid that I'm going to judge people. So or maybe I'm going to sin. I'm afraid I'm going to judge people, and judgments pop in their mind. Oh no, maybe I'm believing that. So now they can look at it and say, well, actually, this is evidence of the fall, which is evidence of my whole Christian faith, which is evidence that there's a Redeemer, which is evidence that I don't have to be worried about anything. And they can kind of use this as a fun way to get out of that. But that's just a bonus idea. The main thing I'm going for is this kind of basic understanding that we don't have an explanation outside of Christianity how humans somehow have a nature that they don't obey. And all the other things kind of have an inadequate explanation. And if we look at the things, we really don't see, I don't think, in Stoicism a really clear understanding of how people were created. We also don't see, I don't think, there's not necessarily a clear understanding, I think, of how the whole karmic system gets started in Hindu traditions. I'm not sure I'm familiar with that. There's definitely a sense that there's this round of rebirth, but there's not always a sense of okay, how did the souls get started forgetting they were souls and stuff like that? How did the souls come out of the Atman? How did the Atmans come out of the Paramatman and the Brahman and all that? I'm speaking in Hindu theological categories here. Those are the words that I'm using. So I think Brahman is the absolute, Atman is the soul. Paramatman is another category for over soul. That's a word, the way it's been translated. You know, but the thing is, we don't have a real clear understanding of these things. But when we get down to Christianity, we get to a really good explanation of this observable effect. And because we get to the best explanation of the observable effect that we experience in our daily lives, it becomes logical to assume that Christianity is true. And the thing is that, we also have to understand within Christianity, there is various schools of thought about what original sin, so to speak, means. And we can really see that, so some things that might say that single thing we do is sin, like some more Protestant conceptions, we could kind of go through a whole list. You probably could come up with some different understandings of this. So for example, you could have very extreme Pentecostal understandings, like in the holiness churches, where they might say, okay, you're going to overcome all this thing, and you're not even going to have the slightest sin anymore. You're never going to sin again. You have this holiness tradition in Pentecostalism that says we can overcome this tendency entirely. You also then have this tendency in like the kind of like Luther and these things to kind of or Calvin to see total depravity, to say, okay, well, actually, you're totally sinful, or even to see or even sometimes you may have some type of a theory that sees the first movements of sin as being sin, But the Catholic view ultimately comes down to being, the true view, which is the view of saying, okay, like you are broken, but you're not worthless. There's a saying that I believe it actually comes from the Orthodox tradition, but applies in the Catholic tradition. We describe ourselves as a beautiful ruin. The thing is, there's stuff that's good, but it's broken. It's like it's distorted. And so this is a better way of talking about this. And so since Catholicism, out of Christian things, is the best way of understanding and interpreting this phenomena, which is discovered as the best way of interpreting this whole big thing, because this is the most balanced and healthy way of saying, okay, I have these tendencies towards sin, which are called concupiscence, but concupiscence itself is not sin. We may have some tendencies to have like a little bit too much emotion about different things, but that is not in itself sin. That's kind of a good, balanced, healthy way of looking at it. That's, and that's why that's would also argue for Catholicism being true. So hopefully this argument from the fact that we have this kind of backseat driver, this broken nature, this experience of I want to not eat chocolate, and my feelings and emotions want to continue to eat chocolate. This is best explained by Christianity and Catholicism, so this is an argument why this is true. So, I hope that is helpful and interesting to you in your journey of thinking about faith. So we close in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.